The most dangerous people are never the ones making the most noise. That was something my father used to say before he passed away, and on that rainy Thursday night, I finally understood what he meant. The rain hammered against my windshield so hard it blurred the streets of Manhattan into streaks of gold and silver light. My shift at Lincoln Elementary had ended hours ago, but parent conferences always ran late. I was exhausted. My coffee had gone cold. My shoulders ached. All I wanted was my tiny apartment in Queens and 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Instead, I found myself stopped at a red light near an industrial section of the city I normally avoided. The warehouses stood like silent giants beneath the storm clouds. Most people would have driven away. I should have driven away. But then I noticed a young boy standing alone beneath a flickering street lamp. He couldn't have been older than 10. He wore a soaked hoodie and clutched a backpack against his chest. My teacher instincts took over before common sense could stop me. I pulled over and grabbed my umbrella. "Hey," I called out as I stepped into the rain. "Are you okay?" The boy looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. Before he could answer, a black SUV turned the corner and rolled slowly toward us. Then another appeared behind it. And another. Every instinct in my body suddenly screamed that something wasn't right. The boy stepped backward, not away from the vehicles, toward them. My stomach tightened. The doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, calm and disciplined. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody hurried. Somehow that made everything feel even more intimidating. Then I saw him. He emerged from the center vehicle with the effortless confidence of a man who never questioned whether he belonged somewhere. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair damp from the rain. His charcoal overcoat moved with him like it had been tailored for royalty. The city lights reflected in his pale blue eyes as he looked toward the boy. The child immediately relaxed. Not fear. Trust. Relief. The man crouched slightly, spoke a few quiet words, then rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. Whatever had frightened the child moments earlier seemed to disappear. I should have left. Instead, I watched. Something about him made it impossible to look away. Then his gaze lifted. Directly to me. Across nearly 40 feet of rain and darkness, our eyes met. The entire world seemed to go silent. I had never seen someone look at me like that before. Not with anger. Not with warmth. With calculation. Like he could see every thought I was trying to hide. My pulse stumbled. One of the suited men moved toward me. I took an unconscious step back. The stranger in the overcoat raised a single hand. The man stopped immediately. No argument. No hesitation. Just obedience. The stranger continued watching me for another second before turning away and guiding the boy toward the SUV. The convoy began to leave. I stood frozen in the rain, trying to convince myself none of it mattered. Then the last vehicle slowed beside me. The rear window lowered halfway. The same blue eyes met mine once more. And for the first time, I heard his voice. Low, calm, certain. "You shouldn't be here, Emily." My blood turned cold, because I had never told him my name. For a moment, I could not breathe. Rain dripped from my hair and ran down my jacket, but I barely felt it. My mind locked onto a single impossible fact. He knew my name. I stood there staring at the dark window as the SUV disappeared into the storm, its taillights fading into the maze of warehouses. Then it was gone, just like that, leaving me alone with questions I could not answer. I drove home on autopilot. The city lights blurred beyond my windshield while his voice replayed over and over inside my head. "You should not be here, Emily." Not "who are you?" Not "are you okay?" He had spoken as if he already knew me, as if he had expected me. My apartment felt smaller than usual that night. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. I made tea and forgot to drink it. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and searched for him. Nothing. At least nothing official. No business profile. No interviews. No company website. Yet pieces of information appeared in scattered articles and rumors buried deep online. Real estate acquisitions. Community development projects. Anonymous donations. Properties stretching across New York. Every trail seemed to lead back to one name. Damian Moretti. By 2 in the morning, I was more confused than when I started. The man I had seen did not fit any category. He was not a politician. Not a celebrity. Not even a public businessman. Yet somehow he seemed connected to everything. I finally fell asleep on the couch just before sunrise. The next morning, I tried convincing myself to forget the entire thing. I had students to teach, papers to grade, a normal life waiting for me. By lunch, I almost believed it. Then the flowers arrived. A delivery man entered the school office carrying a large arrangement of white lilies. The secretary smiled as she checked the card attached to them. "Emily, these are for you." Every teacher in the room looked up. My stomach tightened. Nobody sent me flowers. Ever. I accepted the arrangement and forced a smile. The card contained only one sentence. "I am glad you made it home safely." No signature. No explanation. But I already knew. The elegant handwriting felt as controlled as the man himself. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Every sound made me glance toward the door. Every unknown number on my phone made my pulse jump. When the final bell rang, I practically ran to the parking lot. That was when I noticed the black sedan across the street. It was parked legally. The windows were tinted. Nothing suspicious. Except it had also been there that morning. I stood beside my car pretending to search my purse while watching it. The vehicle never moved. The driver never stepped out. Yet somehow I knew. Someone was watching. Not threatening me. Protecting me. Or monitoring me. Somehow that felt even more unsettling. As I started my engine, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. 3 simple words appeared on the screen. "We need to talk." My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I stared at the message. "We need to talk." No greeting. No explanation. Just 5 words that somehow carried more weight than an entire conversation. I looked across the street toward the black sedan. It remained perfectly still. The engine was probably running. Someone was. Probably watching. Waiting. My phone buzzed again. This time a location appeared beneath the first message. An address in Manhattan. A restaurant I had never heard of. Followed by another sentence. 7 o'clock. I almost laughed. The arrogance of it was unbelievable. Whoever sent that message assumed I would show up. Assumed I would rearrange my life because they asked. I deleted the conversation and drove home. At least that was the plan. Yet all evening the address sat in the back of my mind. While I graded essays. While I ate dinner. While I tried to watch television. By 6:30, I found myself standing in front of my closet wondering what I was doing. At 6:45, I was driving toward Manhattan. I told myself it was for answers. Nothing more. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a historic building overlooking the East River. Everything about it whispered money. Quiet confidence. Old power. The hostess greeted me by name before I introduced myself. That should have been my first warning. Instead, I followed her through the dining room toward a private corner overlooking the city skyline. Damien Moretti sat alone beside the window. The setting sun painted the glass towers beyond him in gold and orange light. He did not stand when I approached. He simply looked up from his coffee as if he had known the exact second I would arrive. "You came," he said. I almost did not. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "But you did." I hated how calm he seemed. How completely comfortable he was while my heart hammered against my ribs. "How do you know my name?" I asked immediately. His expression did not change. "Sit down, Emily." "Answer the question." "Sit down." The strange thing was not that he gave the instruction. The strange thing was that I obeyed. A server appeared almost instantly. Hot tea was placed in front of me. My favorite kind. Chamomile with honey. I had never ordered it. I stared at the cup. Then at Damien. That is not possible. A lot of things are possible. His blue eyes settled on mine. Steady. Unreadable. Especially when protecting someone becomes important. A chill moved through me. Protecting me from what? For the first time since I arrived, Damien looked away. Through the massive windows. Toward the city below. The silence stretched several seconds longer than it should have. Then he spoke quietly. "The night you saw me at the warehouse, you stepped into a world you do not understand." My stomach tightened. "Then explain it." He looked back at me. The confidence was still there. The control. But beneath it I caught something unexpected. Concern. Genuine concern. "That is exactly why you are here." I expected secrets. I expected excuses. What I did not expect was for Damien to stand and gesture toward the window overlooking Manhattan. The city stretched for miles beneath us, glowing beneath the evening sky like a sea of gold. Thousands of people moved through their lives below. Families eating dinner. Students studying for exams. Nurses finishing long shifts. Ordinary people who would never know how many invisible forces shaped the world around them. "Tell me what you see," Damien said. "A city." He nodded slowly. Most people stopped there. He slipped his hands into the pockets of his dark coat and continued watching the skyline. "But every city has another layer. A hidden one." I folded my arms. And you are going to tell me you control it? No. His answer surprised me. I am going to show you. Before I could argue, he turned and walked toward the private elevator. Somehow he already knew I would follow. 20 minutes later, we were moving through parts of Manhattan I had never seen before. Not dangerous neighborhoods. Not abandoned streets. The opposite. We passed construction projects, renovated apartment buildings, community centers, and small businesses that seemed to be thriving despite economic challenges affecting the rest of the city. Everywhere we went, people recognized Damien. A store owner waved at him from across the street. An elderly woman stopped to thank him for helping fund a youth program. A father introduced his daughter and spoke about a scholarship that had changed her future. None of it made sense. This was not the image I had created in my mind. Who are these people? I asked quietly. Damien looked ahead as we walked. People who needed help when nobody else was listening. And you stepped in? He glanced toward me. Would you have preferred I ignored them? I opened my mouth and then closed it again. Hours passed. The deeper we moved into his world, the more confused I became. Every assumption I carried seemed to unravel. By the time we stopped for coffee near the East River, the city lights had fully awakened around us. Reflections danced across the dark water. A cool breeze carried the scent of salt and rain. Damien stood beside the railing, looking out across the river. For the first time all day, he seemed tired. Not physically, emotionally, like someone carrying a weight nobody else could see. Why are you showing me all of this? I finally asked. The question lingered between us. He remained silent long enough that I thought he might not answer. Then he spoke. Because the moment you saw me that night, someone else saw you. Every muscle in my body tightened. What does that mean? Damien turned toward me. The confidence was still there, but now it was mixed with something far more serious. It means you are asking the wrong question, Emily. My pulse quickened. Then what is the right question? His blue eyes locked onto mine beneath the glow of the city lights. The right question is why someone has been searching for you ever since that warehouse. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I stared at Damien, trying to decide whether he was being dramatic or whether I should actually be afraid. The problem was that nothing about him felt dramatic. Every word he spoke sounded measured, deliberate. Searching for me? I repeated. Why would anyone search for me? Damien looked toward the river again. The lights reflected across the water like shattered stars. That is what I am trying to understand. I let out a nervous laugh. You make it sound like I am important. You are important. The answer came so quickly that it caught me off guard. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I shook my head. No, I am a teacher. I spend my days helping fourth graders learn fractions and grammar. There is nothing special about me. Damien's expression softened slightly. That is one of the reasons you do. Not understand what is happening. I crossed my arms against the cool night air. Then explain it to me. He hesitated. Not because he lacked an answer. Because he seemed to be deciding how much truth I could handle. Finally, he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small photograph. The image looked old, worn at the edges. I studied it beneath the nearby street lamp. A community center stood in the background. Several adults smiled toward the camera. A young girl stood near the front. My breath caught. The girl looked remarkably familiar. Who is this? I asked quietly. Damien watched me carefully. You tell me. I looked closer. Blonde hair, green eyes. The same slight curve of the smile I saw every morning in the mirror. My pulse began to race. That looks like me. It is you. I looked up immediately. What? The photograph was taken 18 years ago. My mind struggled to process the statement. That is impossible. My parents would have shown me something like this. Damien remained silent. That silence frightened me more than any answer could have. A cold feeling settled into my stomach. What are you not telling me? The wind shifted around us. Somewhere in the distance, a ferry horn echoed across the water. The city continued moving as if nothing had changed. Yet my entire reality suddenly felt fragile. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. Emily, before that warehouse, I had never heard your name. I blinked. Then why do you know so much about me now? Because after that night, certain people began asking questions. My heartbeat accelerated. What kind of questions? His jaw tightened slightly. Questions about your childhood, your family, your records. Every instinct told me to walk away, to go home, to forget everything. But I could not. Not anymore. Too many pieces no longer fit together. Too many things suddenly felt wrong. I looked down at the photograph again. The little girl smiled at the camera without any idea what her future would become. Then I noticed something I had missed before. Standing in the background, partially hidden near the entrance of the building, was a teenage boy. Dark hair, serious eyes, watching over everyone else. My breath stopped, because even 18 years later, I recognized him instantly. It was Damien. My fingers tightened around the photograph until the edges pressed into my skin. I looked from the image to Damien and back again, hoping I was mistaken, hoping the resemblance was some strange coincidence. It was not. The same eyes, the same posture. Even as a teenager, he carried that quiet certainty that seemed to bend every room around him. "You were there," I whispered. Damien nodded once. The wind moved through his dark hair as he stared out across the river. For the first time since I met him, he looked less like the man who controlled half the city and more like someone trapped inside a memory he could never escape. "I remember that day," he said quietly. "I remember the community center. I remember the volunteers. I remember you." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the traffic behind us. "That does not make sense. I do not remember you." A faint smile appeared on his face, but there was sadness behind it. "You were 9 years old. I was 16. You had no reason to remember me." I looked down at the photograph again. "Then why do you?" The question lingered between us. Damien took several seconds before answering. "Because you were different." I shook my head immediately. "No, do not do that." He looked confused. "Do what?" "Turn me into some mystery. Some special person." My voice rose despite myself. "I was just a kid." "Exactly." His response came softly. "You were just a kid, Emily. Yet every week you brought part of your lunch to another little girl whose family could not afford enough food. Nobody asked you to do it. Nobody praised you for it. You simply did it because you thought it was right." I stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because I saw it." The city seemed strangely quiet for a moment. Damien stepped closer and rested one hand against the railing. "Back then I spent most of my life angry at the world. Angry at people. Angry at circumstances I could not control. Then I met a little girl who shared her lunch every Friday and smiled like kindness was the easiest thing in the world." Emotion tightened unexpectedly. In my chest. "I barely remember any of that." "I do." His voice remained calm. Steady. Honest. That honesty unsettled me more than anything else. "What happened after that?" I asked. Damien's gaze drifted toward the skyline. "The community center closed. Families moved away. Life happened." His jaw tightened slightly. "I never expected to see you again." The photograph suddenly felt heavier in my hands. 18 years. Somehow our lives had crossed paths long before that rainy night near the warehouse. Long before I knew his name. Long before he became the man standing beside me. A vibration interrupted the silence. Damien's phone. He glanced at the screen. Immediately his entire expression changed. The warmth vanished. The reflection disappeared. The guarded man returned. My stomach dropped. "What is it?" I asked. Damien slipped the phone back into his coat pocket. His eyes swept the area around us with renewed focus. "We have to leave." "Why?" He looked directly at me. "Because whoever has been searching for you just made their first move." The change happened so quickly it sent a chill through me. 1 second Damien had been talking about the past. The next, every trace of nostalgia disappeared from his face. His attention shifted beyond me, beyond the river, beyond the city lights. Like he was listening to something nobody else could hear. "Damien." I stepped closer. "What happened?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Plans changed." The response irritated me immediately. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give right now. I folded my arms. "You keep doing that." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Doing what?" "Talking like I am supposed to trust you while refusing to explain anything." For a moment, I thought he might argue. Instead, he surprised me. A faint smile appeared. Not amused. Not mocking. Almost respectful. "You are braver than most people I know. Or maybe I am tired of being treated like I do not deserve answers." The smile disappeared. Fair point. We began walking toward the waiting car parked near the curb. 2 men stood nearby. Until now I had barely noticed them. They were always present. Always watching. Yet, somehow they blended into the background of Damien's world like shadows attached to sunlight. One of them approached quietly and spoke a few words. I could not hear the conversation, but I saw the reaction. The tension in Damien's jaw. The way his shoulders stiffened. Whatever message he received, he did not like it. The drive back felt different. Nobody spoke much. Rain began falling again, tapping softly against the windows. The city moved past in streaks of color and reflection. I found myself studying Damien when he was not looking. For days I had tried to fit him into a category. Criminal, businessman, manipulator, protector. None of them fully worked. He funded schools. He helped neighborhoods. He knew things about my childhood I had forgotten myself. Yet people around him acted as though his decisions carried enormous weight. The contradictions made my head hurt. Stop staring at me. His voice broke the silence. Heat rushed into my cheeks. I was not staring. You were. I looked toward the window. You are impossible. That is not what my staff says. I almost laughed despite myself. Almost. The vehicle slowed in front of my apartment building. Relief washed through me. Finally. Something normal. Something familiar. But the moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, that feeling vanished. A crowd had gathered near the entrance. Neighbors. Police officers. Flashing lights reflected across wet pavement. My stomach dropped. What happened? I whispered. Nobody answered immediately. One officer approached and asked for my name. The moment I identified myself, his expression changed. Confusion. Concern. Then he handed me a sealed envelope. This was left for you. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it were 7 words typed in black ink. We finally found the girl from the photograph. When I looked up, Damien was already staring at the message. And for the first time since I met him, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. For several seconds, nobody moved. Rain continued falling around us, while the flashing lights painted red and blue reflections across the wet street. I looked down at the note again, hoping the words would somehow change. They did not. We finally found the girl from the photograph. My hands trembled. Who wrote this? I asked. The police officer shook his head. No identification. It was left with building management about an hour ago. An hour ago, while I had been walking through Manhattan with Damien. While I had been learning pieces of a past I never knew existed. I slowly turned toward him. The expression on his face frightened me more than the message itself. Damien was not a man who looked surprised. He was not a man who looked uncertain. Yet in that moment, he looked as though a puzzle he had spent years solving had suddenly become far more dangerous. Tell me what is happening, I demanded. Right now. The officer glanced between us. Damien stepped forward. His voice remained calm, but I could hear the tension beneath it. Not here. No. I shook my head. No more secrets. No more half answers. I deserve the truth. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then something shifted in his eyes. Resignation. Acceptance. Maybe even guilt. The police eventually left. The crowd dispersed. Soon only Damien and I remained beneath the glow of the streetlights. The city seemed strangely quiet. He looked toward my apartment building before speaking. 18 years ago, the community center where that photograph was taken received anonymous funding. I frowned. So, the funding was connected to a private foundation. My pulse quickened. And Damien exhaled slowly. That foundation disappeared 6 months later. I stared at him. People do not just lose foundations. This one did. The answer came immediately. Too immediately. As though he had carried it for years. I folded my arms tightly. What are you not saying? His gaze met mine. The people involved vanished from public records. Projects were abandoned. Files disappeared. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Why? For the first time, Damien hesitated. Then he spoke the words that changed everything. Because someone wanted everyone connected to that foundation forgotten. The rain seemed louder suddenly. He reached into his coat and removed another photograph. This one was newer. Clearer. I recognized the building immediately. The same community center from my childhood. Standing beside it was a smiling woman I had never seen before. Yet something about her felt familiar. My stomach tightened. Who is she? Damien's expression softened. That is the woman who created the foundation. I looked again. Blonde hair. Green eyes. The resemblance hit me instantly. My breath caught. She looks like me. Damien nodded. Very slowly. Very carefully. That is because she was your mother. The photograph nearly slipped from my fingers. I stared at the woman again, searching for some sign that Damien was mistaken. There was none. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same eyes. The same smile. The same shape of the face I saw every morning in my bathroom mirror. Rain continued falling softly around us, but I barely noticed. My entire world had narrowed to a single terrifying possibility. No, I whispered. My mother died when I was little. Damien remained silent. That silence told me more than words ever could. My chest tightened. You are saying that everything I know is wrong. I am saying that someone worked very hard to make sure certain truths disappeared. I looked away from him and toward the apartment building. The place that had always felt like home suddenly seemed unfamiliar. Every memory I trusted now carried a question mark. Every story I had been told felt uncertain. Why would anyone do that? My voice cracked slightly. Damien stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. Because your mother believed something dangerous. I shook my head. Dangerous how? He looked toward the photograph. She believed power should protect people, not control them. The words hung in the air between us. For the first time, I understood why Damien had shown me the neighborhoods, the schools, the businesses. Why he had spent days forcing me to see parts of the city hidden from everyone else. He was not showing off power. He was defending a philosophy, one he had inherited from someone I never knew existed. You knew her. It was not a question. Damien nodded slowly. She changed my life. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. When I was young, I thought strength meant making people fear you. She disagreed. A faint smile touched his lips. She told me that anyone can take control. The hard part is earning trust. I stared at him. Suddenly dozens of small moments made sense. The scholarships, the community centers, the people who greeted him with gratitude instead of fear. The man standing before me was not who I thought he was. Maybe he never had been. And all these years, I asked quietly, you never told anyone? There was nothing to tell. The foundation vanished. The records vanished. You vanished. He paused. Until that night at the warehouse. A strange sadness settled over me. Two people from the same forgotten photograph. Two lives moving in completely